Okay, why don't we get started? Hey, thank you, everyone. Welcome to Avalon's webinar series. My name is Bob Lempicki. I am the U.S. Sales Director, and just want to do a quick little intro here. Today, we're going to share some insights into our Oracle expertise, specifically with HCM and the retroactive payroll processing. Okay. We are uniquely really positioned to help our clients in a lot of different ways, mostly through our expertise, but also through our locations. We have offices in the US, Canada, the UK, India, and Dubai. So we're positioned for onshore, offshore resources, and we've been able to help our clients over the years. I've been working with Oracle for over 20 plus years. Been working with Avalon Software Services for over 9 years, and a pleasure for me to be here. I'm going to introduce you to my colleague that's really going to step you through the bulk of this presentation, our subject matter expert, Sal. But we want this to be very interactive. So if you would ask questions as we go through this, the best way to do that is to put them in the chat window or the Q&A window. Okay, when I see those, I will read them over to Sal to answer those. So this way we can kind of proceed in a regular manner there and make sure we get your questions answered. We don't have to save those till the end. So without any further ado, let me introduce you to Sal. Sal, take it away and give a little bit of your background. And we look forward to an interactive webinar today. Thank you, everyone.
Nice to meet you all.
Nice
to be here. My name is Salvatore Calace. I'm a senior managing consultant here at Avalon. I've been an HR professional for over 10 years. Prior to beginning my consulting career, I worked as the HR director at the Illinois Department of Labor. When I transitioned to a consultant, I began working in higher education, reconciling and remediating data for clients primarily in PeopleSoft. And ultimately, when Oracle released their HCM product for cloud, I worked on 5 implementations for the full enterprise solution. I also then worked for Oracle, switched gears to management consulting at Slalom Consulting, and now here I am back with Avalon using Oracle products again. A few fun facts about myself. I'm married. I have 2 kids. I have a boy and a girl. I love playing hockey, played it all my life. And I recently just stopped coaching a local high school hockey team, so I love to coach and teach hockey as well. I currently live in Westmont, Illinois. I'm going to turn my camera off while I'm presenting because I sometimes have audio issues doing so. So just give me one moment there. I want to make sure everybody can still see my screen properly. Any problems there, Bob?
No, it looks good.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so our agenda for today, we'll go quickly over Avalon, what we do. We'll talk through HCM, just a quick overview. I will give an overview of payroll. We'll look through a retroactive, real life business case study as far as performing a retroactive payroll process. Then we'll leave some time at the end for Q&A. And as Bob mentioned, we do like to keep this interactive. We might field some questions on the fly, but after 2 of the sections, I'll briefly pause and see if there's anything that anyone might have a question about that we can address on the fly. If not, we'll be happy to answer those at the end. So Bob briefly touched on some of the things we do, but a brief background about our company. We started in 2010, grown very consistently to just over 125 employees located across the globe. We have headquarters in Texas, India, Dubai, the UK. We have over 70 projects worldwide with our clients right now as well. Our key areas of focus are Oracle products and applications, specifically Fusion, EBS, and mobility specialization. And we provide a deep level of expertise in these areas and consulting advice ranging from business process optimization to the full level implementations, anywhere from upgrades and support services as well. And you can see on the slide here is a sample of some of the offerings. Like I said, from implementations to upgrades, to business process redesign and mapping. We offer a variety of services. So we're honored to be able to present to you today, and we'd love to be able to work with you as well. So now for HCM, why are departments choosing Oracle Cloud HCM? Well, this has the most complete best practice HR cloud in the world. It lays upon a pretty rich foundation that covers employee life cycle all the way from recruiting to retiring based on best practices. Delivers strategic growth, lowers total cost of ownership, uh, also has delivered innovation that reflects where people want to go. So the goal is to build best in class point solutions and innovate faster than anyone else does. As you can see here, some of the some of the areas, modules within HCM, all the way from talent, screening candidates, onboarding, have your time and absence, benefits, compensation, your performance evaluations, talent reviews. Ultimately, everything's going to flow into payroll, which we'll talk about. But this complete solution is really something that's innovating and something that clients are really liking, helping reduce a lot of their time, efforts, manual dual data entries, providing a single source of truth, having the data all in one place. So payroll, it's my favorite solution. Actually, it's amazing what Oracle has actually done with all the way from the PeopleSoft days to now with their cloud payroll, the way that it has its manual and automated checks and balances, its best practice delivered business process flow. I think it offers the best delivered business process flow of any solution. And that's not even being biased. I've seen them. I really love working with the Oracle product. The manual, like I said, the automated to manual stops. It provides reports in real time. And I remember back, maybe a decade ago, pulling reports was very difficult. And when I saw the automated feature of the reports that are there for you to manually check or to continue within payroll, that was truly something that was a game changer for me and something that clients are. It's amazing how many hours are reduced in just pulling reports, printing different documents, reconciling from different reports. So in that area, the business process, which I said is a delivered flow, is truly an incredible solution. Within payroll, we also have our elements, which are the building blocks. You can create your own fast formulas. You can use any math, any logic. I know everyone thinks they have very unique rules that that are hard to understand, hard to implement, hard to configure. Oracle's product allows that uniqueness to kind of go away and normalize anything that any client does, giving you the ability to put your business within the solution without having to customize coding within the solution. Configuration is the most important thing, and providing the way that you do things. The solution itself is able to handle the uniqueness of that and to give you the outputs that from your inputs that you desire. You don't have to have sticky notes everywhere. A lot of businesses don't have the most up-to-date or cloud functionality. You may actually be doing things with pencil and paper. You may be doing manual entries into a system that has green screens, from 25 to 35 years ago. I had to when I worked in the government for the Illinois Department of Labor. So when I saw these things, it was, for me, I wish I had that when I was there. But some businesses are behind. But if you're at the level of cloud now, then this is truly something that will help your organization. And we can see here the payroll flow. So we can talk about how Oracle Cloud Payroll handles the table stakes. You have your inputs. Oracle Cloud Payroll is tightly coupled with HCM cloud applications, like I kind of showed within the first slide. So that means that getting critical payroll information into the system is simple. You have one source of truth. You have your inputs from benefits, compensation, absence, time, and labor. Based on effective dates, they're included in the calculation phase of the payroll processes. So Oracle Cloud Payroll can easily handle the inputs from your external sources. It has a delivered loader that can provide full audits as well to ensure that the data is validated for accuracy. You have your calculations. Oracle Cloud Payroll eases the burden of the calculations process as the payroll professional itself, essentially. So manager administrator making those calculations. It's nothing that has to be done manual. Everything's configured within the elements. Payroll provides a checklist, it streamlines the process for you, allows you to manage breakpoints for validation, has the reporting like we talked about. It has its balances as well. It gives all payroll professionals flexibility in managing the payroll flow. If there are issues with payroll calculations, for instance, the results for certain individuals or groups of people, the entire payroll process doesn't need to stop while the issues are being researched or resolved. It can continue on, and you can manually have that stop, correct the process, and the payroll will then automatically pick up the rest of the calculations and process accordingly. The rest of the payroll continues, like I said. The payroll manager can mark individuals that have issues. You can retry payrolls, rerun payrolls. You can run quick pays, kind of ad hoc payrolls, if you will. And payroll timelines are on pretty tight schedules, and they can't be changed. So the functionality here to retry is a pretty big game changer to make sure that payroll ultimately gets delivered on time. You also have your outputs, so where Oracle Cloud Payroll handles the output from payroll the way that you want it handled. Payroll distributes payments, produces online page slips, checks, EFT files, third-party interfaces. It's coupled very tightly with Oracle Cloud ERP for financials and accounting integration, and also can very easily interface to third-party financial systems. So it's important to note that in all phases of the payroll process for Oracle Cloud, everything's done in real time. Analytics, reports, legislative reports, balances, reconciliations. It's all done in real time. There's nothing that you have to worry about entering a transaction that's not going to ultimately be picked up, which is essentially the point of what we're going to talk about in our use case today. You can make retroactive transactions because not everything can be essentially added in real time. But when the retro transaction is added, it will be picked up in real time with no concern. So Oracle Cloud Payroll also gives you the ability to create your own reports. Like we talked about, there are delivered reports, but you have the ability to create your own and run them as part of the payroll process, which is something that's pretty cool because something such as a balance exception report, you want to create some type of notification to yourself that maybe someone's time has exceeded a certain range that would make you need to be alerted, but you can still move forward. You can create a report that would generate a list of those employees while payroll is processing. So that way you can check, there's 5 employees that have over the amount of time they've worked. Let's see what's going on there. Maybe it's fine, maybe it's not, but based on your organization's rules or regulations, that's just something that's nice for you to have the ability to be able to handle. We talked about the payroll stakes a little bit there. Here's a nice list of the inputs, the calculations, and the outputs for payroll. What you need to put in to get out. You have your salary changes, promotions, time and absence. These are things that also can be done in a retroactive manner. The elements, like we discussed, have the formulas within them. You have your effects of the retros. You can reconcile your gross to net. You have your earnings, taxes, deductions. It will also recalculate everything if needed when you're performing these retros, ultimately giving you the outputs as you see the pay slips, your W-2s, your checks, reports, things for third-party payments such as wage garnishments. All things of that nature can be done. It's done in real time, gives you the outputs you needed. Formulas are always there within the elements. And it really is just a simplified way to have your organization's payroll run. I've been saying the word elements, so as you can see here, here's the way that payroll elements are comprised. They're truly the building blocks of payroll. They help determine the payments, things like your base pay, benefits, your absence and accruals, your hours, earnings, your deductions. We know as separate earnings and deductions are reconciled into really one item, which is the elements themselves. I talked about fast formulas as well. Fast formulas give you the ultimate flexibility to handle your most complex calculations. Really, it's going to ensure that you get across to the You do not have to build a formula for every earning, every deduction, but the system will build working formula whenever you have an element wizard or something along those lines. You can put any math, any logic, and if you do it like I had mentioned at the beginning, if you have complex rules, you have concerns about, is the solution able to handle, our complex overtime calculations, or will it be pulled in from time and labor, or our timekeeping solutions? The answer is yes. You just have to understand how to write fast formulas. It can handle any type of scenario that you tell it to do so, and it will give you the appropriate output. And that's something that, like, as you can see in the red there, it's update safe. So you do not have to worry about when there's when Oracle provides the new releases, you don't have to retest your fast formulas you've already created. Everything will work appropriately. It's not something that requires your internal IT team to have some test cases or reiterate the tests that were already performed, which is something big, because that can save countless number of time, whether it might even be weeks worth of time whenever there's a new release and you're worried about getting that release pushed to you. And here's the costing hierarchy as well. Some organizations don't use this, I suppose, but for the most part, organizations want to know where their pay is being allocated to, which also can play into the retro process as well. But here's the hierarchy and the way that the things are set up. You have your cost allocation key flex field. It creates a structure for your financial accounting of your payroll costs. Flex fields captures the account codes you use to create accounting entries and to report and track your labor costs, essentially. A couple organizations that we're at, this is an important part because they want to make sure that things are being charged correctly, especially employee salaries. If you have some employee that may have split salaries of 50% to their home department, and maybe it's 50% based on the job they're performing because they work multiple jobs within their shifts, that's something that you need to ensure that you set up in the first place, and configure appropriately how you'd like that to perform. And the delivered functionality has this hierarchy. This is something at the time of your implementation that you would decide. But if they're within a specific payroll, someone is getting paid a certain amount of money, you need to make a change. Maybe it went from 50-50 to 100%, and you need to go a month back. That is also something that can be handled retroactively. One of the main concerns I had regarding the retroactive changes for costing would be crossing fiscal year lines, just based on some organizations that I've seen. Internal policies, it's not for everybody, but that's one of the pain points, is having to cross those fiscal lines. The system doesn't necessarily care about the fiscal line there, but the transactions will ultimately be retroactively changed accordingly, and you'd have to handle that within your internal organization's rules. The fiscal line's not going to prevent you. Won't be a time period that has surpassed that you wouldn't be able to make that retroactive change. And so that's those are our brief overviews there. And I want to just kind of pause here for a moment and see if there's any questions. Bob, if anything has maybe come up, I'm also happy to field a few questions, just since it was an overview. If there's something that you'd like to know from a higher level, not necessarily in the weeds from retroactive processing, but just in general about anything.
Yeah. Hey, Sally, you do have a few questions here. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yep.
Okay. So one of our attendees says, our organization has unique rules and calculations. Can fast formulas be used to create these types of rules, or would be looking more at a customization?
So that's a good question, actually. So as far as customizations, and when I've been at a lot of different clients too, I always kind of laugh at that, because the customization, they always kind of called that the C word. They didn't like to hear it because nobody wants to have to customize anything. Because when you customize something, when I talked about the update safe, you don't want to have to customize something and then retest it and spend all of those hours, weeks, months trying to figure out if your customization actually still works. So the answer to the question is that you don't customize, there's no change in any sort of coding or logic or anything like that. You're just literally, it's like building a file in Excel or a formula in Excel essentially. You put your logic in there. It has a formula to give you the output that you need. So based on your inputs, it's going to give you an output. It's not going to change. And like I said, the releases that Oracle pushes, I think it's quarterly now. That's not going to have any impact on the fast formulas, and it doesn't have to just be for payroll. It can be for any any type of solution that you're looking for. That might not necessarily be within delivered functionality, but something such as your workforce compensation, making changes based on some sort of eligibility criteria. That's something that can be included in there as well. But yes, it can handle those unique rules, and it does not require a customization of any sort.
Great. Excellent. Nobody likes customization. So,
right, exactly.
I do have another question here too. Asks, is the payroll flow you just showed us something that needs to be configured based on their payroll process, or is it delivered functionality?
The payroll flow that I showed, that's an illustrative example. I didn't show the actual screens within the Oracle Cloud solution, but that is delivered functionality. And like I had mentioned, Oracle Cloud's payroll solution, I believe, is the best in class solution because of that delivered functionality that it offers. It kind of understand. Oracle did a good job of understanding, what majority, if not all, in a nutshell, of businesses are doing to process their payroll, and it put these checks and balances within the delivered functionality to allow payroll to process and also provide, from a delivered standpoint, manual checkpoints where, okay, you want to see your retroactive report, you're going to stop payroll here once you kind of review that and then process that moving forward, approve that you have reviewed that, the retro report, then payroll will proceed, which is pretty realistic. When you're running payroll and you do want to have your checks and balances, you're going to do that anyways. And but then you might have to do something manual after. But yeah, that's delivered functionality. And I have not heard any clients that I've worked with want to make changes from that process, with the exception of maybe adding a different report in where they want to review. So really, they're just adding to an already good process. Does that answer your question?
Yep. Yeah, I think that I don't see any other follow-up. So yeah, thanks to our audience for those questions. That's all I have right now.
Thanks, Bob. All right, so I'll proceed now to our retroactive case. And again, I like to keep this interactive. So this is just, it's a high-level example just from someone's salary. But if there's any questions that you have that are more in the weeds, please just ask that on the fly, because this is really just supposed to be an exercise in understanding how retro is performed, and but also understand that retros can be performed for other transactions that aren't just a simple monthly payroll salary that is 1 month removed, if that makes sense. So I'll show you here. This is employee Carol Terry. So Carol was due a salary increase on February 1st, 2019, but the manager was late submitting this change. This is a pretty realistic situation, especially when I worked for the Illinois Department of Labor. I had to do this multiple times, including union dues, where you may miss that, which when you're not on a cloud solution and everything is done by one person and it's on pencil and paper, which is very realistic, or having sticky notes, there's going to be things that are missed. You're going to have to make an addition or enter a different transaction somewhere. So I like this example a lot because it just shows, it may seem simple, but it's a real problem that businesses do face. So this ultimately led to a transaction having a past effective date, and payroll had already been processed for 2 periods. So as a result, Carol needed to retro pay to make up for the difference, and the difference was calculated, processed within the next payroll. So she paid twice a month, bi-monthly. So it was March 1st, 2019 during that payroll run. So you can see here the regular salary. Carol makes $120,000 a year. So to keep things simple, we have $5,000 per pay period for the bi-monthly. The total pay was $10,000 for the month. Like we said, it was a month behind. We have Carol's new wages there, right? So she needed to get a $100 increase. So the regular salary was paid of the $5,000. We're going to have the of the $100. We're going to have our retro calculation here. So it's going to be $5,100. You can see here the total pay. And then you have only the $100 change in the annual salary. So you can see here for Carol, this is the managed salary page. In order to accomplish what we just discussed, you're going to have to add a new effective date row, right? So in order to do so, you're going to go to Carol's managed salary page. You can see the salary history originally. Sorry, I think I said 120,000, but we have 60,000. I doubled it. I apologize about that. But we have made that change, right? So we're going to February 1st. We're going to say that we need to make that increase for $1,200 per year, which is going to be a $100 increase per month. We saw that we have the $100 increase in the math that I showed on the previous page. We make that change, and this from this screen here, when we enter this all automatically gets picked up by payroll. It goes to the regular salary element. All the math and calculations are done, and while you're running payroll, you'll be able to see this in any retro report that's pulled, which we'll see in a second. You don't have to go into anything and change anything else. Just from here, this transaction will automatically create all the necessary components to get you the output of what you need, which is just a $100 increase, and also that's going to be moving forward and be the new salary.
Mhm.
So we can see here this. Yep. Is there a question?
Yeah, I just had a question come up here. So let me
Sure.
throw this at you here, if I can interrupt. Someone just chatted in. How do you handle retroactive payroll adjustments for different employee types, such as full-time employees, part-time, or contractors?
So there. I mean, I want to make sure I understand the question, but I don't think that would have an impact on the change, right? So if you're talking about like in batch, or some type of bulk change, or is it more of if the person happens to be a contractor but they missed $300 last month, what do we do? Because the process, from my understanding here, would be the exact same. You're going to go make this change per the employee. They're the way that they're classified for their job that they're doing, or whatever position, job, whatever you're speaking of, that should not have an impact on having to make a change. You're just going to go here, add a new, add the transaction, add the effective date, and everything that would need to be, encompassed in that, how they're paid, if they're hourly, salary, whatever the case is. The system already has that information in there. So really, it's the effective date and the math that needs to be entered, and the system can calculate everything thereafter. Does that answer your question, or is it more specific than that?
I think that answered it. I don't see any follow-up, so I think that did it. Thank you.
That is a good question, though. I mean, I could see concerns of that, because obviously it's not just like one person's going to get paid on the same frequency, but that's important to know, that if you need to make a change, all you're worried about is making the change for adding the effective date and adding the new amount. And like you can see here in the action reason, if you need to do that because you're saying all contractors, maybe every single contractor it was due, a cost of living adjustment of 2%. You can see the action reason, kind of in the middle of the screen here, mass adjustment. You can actually, in bulk, you can do 1,000 employees at a time, 2,000, 200, whatever the case is. So that's something that can be done too. Any other questions there, Bob, or should I proceed?
No, keep going. I think we'll have
Okay.
some more.
Okay, so we have the statement of earnings here, and statement of earnings is always what I use to review anything, or you could use to review after payroll is run. It gives you the granular details you need, to kind of see what's happened. And we have a pretty basic example here. I mean, if we had benefits here, we could have a lot of different, like tuition reimbursement. It can get very granular if there's different types of earnings or different types of deductions, whatever the case may be. But for the sake of this example, just to kind of keep things at a 101 level, we have our regular salary, we have the regular salary retro. We can see, how the earnings were calculated, and it gives you a breakdown. You can drill down further into all areas here. But once you go back to this person's statement of earnings after each pay period, you will be able to see the changes that were made. And like you see here, we have our salary retro, which is always nice because you don't really want to be adding anything on your own, in your mind. It just shows you right here. It's $100 extra dollars. The reason why it's $5,100 is because of the $100 extra dollars. So I like to keep the example simple because then that also applies to the more complex examples. I did mention earlier, the reporting that's done in real time and in an automated manner is really an amazing feature for clients because you're able to kind of get this information. So what I did is I just took a screenshot of two different reports that are generated, from this simple retroactive change. We have the first one, our retroactive entries report. You can see here we have our employee Carol, we have our relationship, we have the payroll calculation, we have the process date, we have all the information we need to understand that the person's regular salary was that, and then they had a retroactive change, which made it $100 additional dollars. We have a retroactive notification report as well. So you'll see this. This is a report that you will see when you go to run your payroll. You want to be able to see not is it just Carol, but are there any other retroactive changes that are going to be made, so that way you can identify, how many are we expecting, but ultimately, the numbers will tie up at the end. You don't have to do any manual reconciliation. You'll have your reconciliation report, and you'll be able to process payroll accordingly. And here's a list of just some common pain points that I personally have seen amongst clients that I've worked with. I'm sure there's more that can be added to this list. I'm positive there's more that can be added to this list, but the things that stick out to me here are entering transactions while payroll is already being processed. This was something that was big for me when I started my consulting career because of the way PeopleSoft, because of the way that payroll was processed using PeopleSoft. It was more process oriented. It wasn't necessarily as automated as you would have liked. And there were periods of time where when you begin payroll, as anybody here that's a payroll professional knows, you have to begin your payroll. Doesn't take 1 hour to do it, right? There's a process for it. But a lot of changes could be made. Let's say you start your payroll on a Monday and it's going to end on Wednesday and the payday is Thursday. If that's the case and changes are made, from anytime payroll begins all the way through Wednesday, let's say, when we run your final pay calc, those transactions back in the PeopleSoft days were not going to be picked up because of the way that the processes were run. You'd have to know that those transactions were coming, and you'd have to recalc and then run your payroll again, so that way you can pick up those changes. So that was a big concern, especially with one of the universities in higher education I was working with. There were 6 campuses. It was not decentralized, so it all came to a centralized area. But this was a big pain point because they never knew what was happening with the transactions. Employees were constantly calling or messaging, saying things didn't get picked up, and there was a limitation where sometimes that if you made a change, an effective data change during that time period, it would create the effective data row, wouldn't pick up the change, and wouldn't keep the change in the future either. So while they looked like in their archived records that they had that transaction, it just wasn't being picked up. And as months go by, it's hard to reconcile something like that. Point is, with Oracle Cloud's payroll solution, you don't have to worry about this type of scenario taking place because everything's done in real time. You can enter transactions whenever you want, and payroll is going to automatically pick those up. Doesn't matter if you've already calculated your payroll or random, since it's the payroll process is delivered, it knows these changes are going to be, put in there. And when you have an effective data row in Oracle Cloud solution, it's going to be picked up on the next one if it's not picked up on the first one for whatever purpose, because you don't, the lines are accurate as opposed to PeopleSoft. Like I said, there was a limitation and kind of a little glitchy area, but now that they've learned from that, you're not going to have these types of situations where you might even have to put a blackout in your organization so that people can't make transactions. So that's something that I think stuck out to me from day one, because I always had to review these types of transactions and knew that there was an issue. Another one is the inability to validate mathematical calculations. And obviously this is not going to be a problem with Oracle Cloud, but if you have something that's out of date or something that's green screens and someone has to manually do things, like I said, like I did for the Department of Labor. I didn't want to have to mathematically calculate everything because there was a lot of changes and a lot of math, and we shouldn't have to be doing that in the day and age that we're in. And we don't have to talk about that when we're in Oracle Cloud Payroll because it already has all of that stuff built in. Lack of reporting and visibility for retro transactions, that was huge. I discussed that already. Retro transactions being made after the fiscal year end. This was something that's a pain point just because of a lot of the clients I work with internal rules about making changes, retroactive changes after a fiscal year is already closed. This may not apply to everybody, but it's not an issue to make changes because, like I said, the system's not going to necessarily care about the fiscal year that you're operating on. It just as effective dates. So the changes will be made. It's just going to be up to you to make sure that you're updating your general ledger and have the checks and balances in place to make sure you're compliant with your own organizational rules. Now, retroactive time entries not being picked up during payroll processing was another one, and this we can get into the weeds on this for a while. It could be a whole webinar, a whole session in itself. But this is something that that clients, it's hard to know especially if you have integrations. It's something that also realistically is going to have to happen because changes are always made to time entries after something's already closed. I think we can be honest and open about that. So, but in Oracle Cloud, especially if you're using Oracle Cloud Time and Labor, the whole HCM suite, like nothing that you do in there is not going to be picked up because all the data, everything's in one place. It's a single source of truth. So as your system of record, you make retroactive time changes, it's going to be processed during the next payroll. And the last one for me was the lack of automation, manual calculations and recalculations being done. We talked about that already. You're risking human error if you're doing that, which we all human and we make mistakes. But when you're using the full HCM suite, with Oracle Cloud Payroll, you don't have to worry about lack of automation because it's almost entirely automated, with the exception of when you want it to have your checks and stops. You don't have to perform manual calculations because you've already configured. The system is already configured, and you would already configure the system to calculate based on whatever inputs that you want for your outputs. We can add this list as well, but if this hits home for anybody, I'm happy to discuss further any of these. But just to get our minds going, here's my common pain points list. And I'll stop here, Bob, to see. That's the end of my example, and I think we're actually doing pretty good on time. So we have the last couple minutes for Q&A. Are there anything that we want to discuss now, or if not,
I do have a few questions here that I'll
okay.
Thank you for those questions again. Someone asked, can you perform retroactive transactions for costing allocation? As example, charging salary to your home department, that sort of thing.
So you can, and that's actually something that's it can get complex when you're trying to reconcile those types of changes. But the short answer is yes, and you will be able to see that, like I showed in the statement of earnings. You can also drill into the weeds on that to see the actual changes that are made. I've seen this happen for things that were split costing all the way up to 4 different types of 25%, 25%, 25, and then 25 again to 4 different areas. That obviously creates a lot of effective changes, but you can and it does have the ability to reconcile that perfectly, as long as you're entering the transaction the way that you desire, which I've seen a lot of organizations. It's hard when you don't have someone dedicated to essentially a consultant, basically, to be there to be able to reconcile those types of things. So if you make these changes on your own and you're assuming that it's being picked up correctly, you're likely correct. But if you then later try to reconcile these yourself, it's hard to manually calculate those because it's a lot of moving parts. But in my experience, unless something's drastically changed, I've really gone in the weeds in that area. And I have seen, like I said, up to 4 different changes at one time for actually multiple months making that change, all being picked up and properly checking out. And I've spent way too much time in my life to actually identifying that. But so just so it can be done. And I'm very confident that the system will be able to handle just about anything that you'd have in that area.
Good. I have another one here too. Thanks, Sal. Is there a cutoff time for transactions that would not be picked up during the payroll processing?
So no, there's not. Like I had used their example back in the PeopleSoft days. Some organizations would make their own cutoffs then because they were just tired of having to worry. So that if there was something made after within their own rules, you weren't supposed to make it anyway. So they didn't care. And in this case, the system is not going to lock down or stop anybody from making any transaction at any time. And it also will pick up those transactions and process them accordingly. If payroll had just been run on, and it's the payroll run date, you just ran payroll and then a transaction is entered for a retro, that obviously we could logically say like that's not going to be picked up because you already ran payroll. But if there's any point within the payroll process before you actually run your final payroll, that's going to be picked up. There's no limitation. The system doesn't lock down. There's no blackout period, and you don't have to worry about it not getting picked up.
Great. And then kind of a follow-up to that, can you run an off-cycle payroll to process the retroactive payment?
So that's a good one, actually, because it does give you the flexibility to do that. And some organizations actually would prefer if you have a retro change, maybe let's say it's bi-weekly and it's only the first week. Someone brings something to your attention, and it's kind of critical because it goes 6 months back. Someone was supposed to get, let's just say their union increase was 6%. But 6% is a lot, and if it's been several months, you want to make sure that person is getting paid because maybe you don't want them to wait another week when it's already come to your attention because it's already been several months. So yes, you can run what's called a quick pay, and it's that can be done per individual employee where it literally will just run its own, essentially like a mini full payroll for that employee, and it would take into account the retro changes that you're making. It's not like you're running a specific retro quick pay, but you're running a quick pay. You can pay that person too. So you're essentially running a payroll for one employee, but it's picking up those retroactive changes.
Great. That was the last question I had. Any other questions from the group before we kind of finish up here? Thank you, Sal.
Yeah. I'll turn my camera back on too since we're at the end.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there you go.
Well, here's a list of some of the the HCM clients that we're working with today. You can see it's a pretty wide range. It's not specific to one industry, but we do work with many different HCM clients, and we'd be happy to add a few more to our list.
Hey, Sal, I do have a few other questions that just came in, so
yeah,
let me see if we can back up. So it says when an employee misses 2 months of appraisals due to human error, and the arrears are updated into retro payroll, is it possible to add the arrears to the next month's dues?
So that's a very specific question. I'd like to answer yes, just because I know that arrears can be accomplished. And I've actually, when I worked for Oracle, we had a lot of those kind of circumstantial pay and arrears types of questions when it came to them being interested and then ultimately wanting to purchase the solution. That was kind of a game changer for them if it could or could not happen. Payment can be done in arrears, and it's a little more complex than maybe just answering yes, because I want to make sure that your exact solution that you're saying, or your exact use case, can be done. And that's something that if I were to take on that question and it was something that you were going through an RFP process or something, I would make sure that I saw that example built into a demo environment, and then be actually run, even if it's for a couple employees, just to then check out the output from exactly what you'd be expecting. I'd like to know those exact rules you're expecting, the exact all the data that you'd be expecting to be input in there, and then the output you'd be expecting. And I'd like to be able to reconcile that list. So as much as I wanted to say yes, I want to be honest and straightforward and say that it's something that I would do that as a test case just to make sure that the answer truly is yes, because of how complex that could ultimately be.
Right. Yeah, and they kind of added there as well, or are there any other alternative approaches? It sounds like there are. So that's a good discussion, and that's I think a place where we can kind of drill into that as needed, and like you said, understand some of their situations there. So thank you for
No, that's
that.
a very good question too, and it's also, if you have things like that, I'll just make mention, you're going through an RFP process, or you're interested in an implementation partner, you want to make sure that those types of things are addressed, because if someone's just going to tell you yes that it can be done, it might be true, but it also might not be, and you need to make sure of that before you're investing your time into something that ultimately is going to be your problem later. So that's a very good question, and it seems like if you want to discuss that further, I'm happy to take that offline, but thank you for asking that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you, everyone. We're right about at our ending time here. We appreciate your attention and your participation here. There's some contact information for Sal. If you need some more information, feel free to reach out to us. We can, in this case, we can set up a quick little call just to talk in more detail. Feel free to look at our website as well, avalonsoftwareservices.com, and you'll see some upcoming webinar events. We're going to continue these throughout the year, and we look forward to seeing you on a future one. We'll send some additional information as well. So if there aren't any other questions or comments, we really want to thank the group. Thank you for your attention, and we look forward to maybe talking with you in the future. Anything else, Sal?
That's it for me. No, it's been fun. I appreciate it. I love to keep talking with anybody that's interested. My contact info is here. Thanks for attending, and hope to see you guys again soon.
Great. Thank you all again from Avalon.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day.
Bye-bye.